Welcome to Music for Storytellers, a podcast dedicated to music for visual media. Our goal is to explore the many ways musical creators write music for stories such as films, video games, commercials, plays, and whatnot. On today's episode, we're exploring somewhat of a new topic for us, which is theater. We are very pleased to have our friend Benjamin Kwasi Burell as a guest to discuss this topic. Ben is a composer, orchestrator, arranger, and musical director from London, England. He studied jazz piano at Trinity College of Music and earned a master's in scoring for film, television, and video games from Berklee College of Music. Sounds familiar? I know. We promise we'll have guests who aren't from Berklee eventually. But for now, let me list off a few of Ben's latest credits in theater. He is the composer and musical director for the Young Vics Best of Enemies play, the composer and arranger for the National Theatre's production of Sheila Delaney's A Taste of Honey, composer and musical director for the hit play Small Island. He is assistant musical director of Get Up, Stand Up, the Bob Marley musical. Not too bad. Ben has also scored a feature film entitled Shortcut and several independent short films and is the current musical director of the House Garage Orchestra. We obviously could have discussed so many topics with Ben, but our main topic today was theater and musical direction. We went over some of his current jobs, his creative process. We talked about how he got into working in theater, as well as some of the other bands he's involved with. So before we get started, we have a few announcements. We just want to remind you that you can find our videos on YouTube if you prefer to watch us. And also, we have created a Patreon account to provide more for our listeners and create a small community together. So we'd like to invite you to join us if you would like to support, and we would greatly appreciate it. And so without further ado, here we go. Hello, Ben. Mr. Benjamin Kwasi, how are you?
I'm good. I'm very well. Nice to be here with you guys, man. This is really nice
to have you with us.
Yeah.
And so we like to start by asking, what have you been up to lately professionally? What do you do?
Wow, man. Yeah, a lot. Well, a lot of things. Yeah, a lot of things. So my main job at the moment is I'm assistant musical director on Get Up, Stand Up, which is the Bob Marley musical.
Nice.
And then alongside that, I'm also composing for plays. So my next up and coming play is called Blues from Alabama Sky. It's going to be at the National Theatre, directed by Lynette Linton, who's amazing. And so I'm just getting into kind of doing a bit of research, trying to find out about which musicians I'd like to record, and trying to figure out what the sound of that score is going to be.
Nice.
Which is really exciting. Really.
So,
exciting,
are you a composer, arranger, musical director? What's your role on this job?
So I mean, like me generally, it's sort of hard to define, I guess, because I do a lot of things. I do almost everything, right. At some level. But for plays, I'm usually contracted as the composer. So straight composer, okay. Which normally means you will compose all the music, obviously, but also means you'll probably be responsible for working with cast if there are any songs in the play. So you'd be responsible for making sure they know the song and making sure making sure it works, making sure that the music's been recorded for that song and everything that goes along with it. So it's quite all-encompassing on plays, I guess, because the budget is quite small. So it's like one person does pretty much everything, whatever needs to be done.
Interesting. And maybe we could dive into this a little more, because I'm a bit confused as to what's the difference between plays and musicals, what kind of music there is in plays, and if there are songs or if there's always songs, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I guess the biggest difference between plays and musicals is the amount of music and the amount of songs.
Okay.
So musicals are, they're both obviously vehicles for telling a story. Both of them have, actors on stage, telling the story, your set and your lighting and all of that sort of stuff, and a live audience. But I guess the biggest difference, was that musicals tend to tell the story mainly through songs. and plays will be reliant on the text, whatever
Okay,
text.
but there's still some music in. Not all plays have music, right?
No, right, yeah. So I guess it's really down to the taste of the director you're working
Okay.
with. About the, I think it's very similar to film in that you're following a director's kind of vision for whatever the play is, and then you're kind of trying to create a balance musically between the text and the kind of play as a whole, and the music. And I think a lot of the time a song in a play works really well, because what you end up having is it's almost like an interlude almost. Right. It's something that gives you a kind of a moment to enjoy something slightly different that you haven't had before. Plus, I think there's that really strong thing, I think, with live performance where you're just connected. You're just connected to the performer, especially if it's music,
Right.
You just find there's this kind of really nice moment where you can, you just see the story being told in a different way, which I think is really good. It's really nice. But not all directors will want a song.
Okay.
So plenty of directors will be like, no way, this play is far too serious, far too highbrow to have a song in,
But if there's no song, can there still be music, like background music? Is that what you do sometimes?
Yeah, definitely, wow. Yeah. I think I approach working on plays in a really similar way to the way I'd work on a short film or a film. It's really just finding moments that need extra storytelling, extra music to help with the storytelling. Okay. And I think like the same conversations you'd have with a director about whether or not a scene needs underscoring, it's the same with a play and the film. I think the biggest difference is that a play in general, it's very the moments are very fragile. Mm-hmm. It's very easy to destroy the feeling or the storytelling of a scene with music in a play. Super easy to put too much music essentially, and then all you're doing is listening to the music, and you're overshadowing what's going on stage.
Okay.
So it's like an exercise in sensitive underscoring, I think.
But then how do you
trying to stay out of the way?
How do you deal with the music in a play in comparison to a film in terms of timing? Because I'm guessing in a film you just have a scene, it's 2 minutes long, and you exactly know, okay, here are the sync points. But in a play, maybe the actors play the scene 2 minutes, or they play it, and the next time they play it 4 minutes. How do you react on that?
Yeah, it's really a good question. Because you're absolutely right. It's very, the way I think of it, which is I know we haven't spoken about Berkeley yet, but Berkeley, our video game scoring classes at Berkeley. So it's super connected to the way that we think about having interactive music. And there's actually a piece of software called QLab, which they use a lot in theatre. They actually use it for every single sound effect that you might hear. Anything that's not music, anything that's not live, is cued through a program called QLab. And in QLab, you can actually set up vamps. You can set up timed vamps. You can fit timed loops, infinite loops. You can set up layering. So all that layering stuff we did, you can set that up in QLab. So it's quite fun. It's quite a fun exercise, really, to be like, okay, look, I can use layering in this scene, or I could use the other things that we did in video class.
All those other techniques.
Class. Yeah, all the other techniques. Like the techniques that we went through are all applicable, essentially, because it's the same thing.
It's interactive, right, basically.
Yeah. It's interactive.
So are you standing behind like the console, or are you somewhere on stage? Are you playing, or is it just you're managing that QLab session, or is it both?
So they will generally have somebody who they call the sound number one, who is responsible for mixing the show. And actually, this is one really interesting thing that I didn't know before I started doing plays, but this sound number one, because so everybody's wearing a sort of a head mic, it might be sort of like sticking out the bottom of their wig, or it might be hidden in the beard or somewhere. Anyway, but everyone's wearing a mic, and the sound mix or sound number one actually mixes those mics live. So depending on how loud that person might be speaking or singing that night, or and actually each line, which I think is absolutely insane, but each line, if there's two people on stage, for example, it might be Bob and Rita Marley, for example, two faders. Bob says a line, his fader goes up, Rita's goes down. Rita says a line, and it's vice versa.
And he's playing with that?
Then, and literally sound designers like sound number one is doing this live, mixing live, which I'm like, that's insane. Crazy. So if you're ever in a theatre show and you're like, oh, I missed that, why didn't I hear that line? It's because the sound mixer has not caught the line and the fader's still down, so the mic's not coming through the system. So
crazy.
Yeah, you think there would be technology to make that easier?
Probably is.
Probably, but yeah, it's still pretty manual. So anyway, so that person is the one that's you basically, as you go through setting up the show, you give them all the cues in order to make sure that the music changes at the right point.
Okay.
So they might be looking out for a line, or they might be looking out for a movement, or they might be looking out for, might be various different cues that they'll look out for and manually see it or hear it and press go onto the next cue. Okay. And everything's in a big list. And it sounds complicated, but it's not that. It's not as complicated.
Just for people who've never done it, it's like it's very particular. So when you're a musical director on these shows, does your job change, or is there a part of the job that's live that you have to do live?
Yeah. So if you're basically most of the time, if you're contracted as a composer, that sort of means you work up until the opening night of the show. So you work all through rehearsals, you work into the technical rehearsals, and then when the show actually opens and is open to the public, that's you finished. Because you can't change anything. Yeah, right. Composer done. Can't change anything. That's me done. But as a musical director, that generally means that there's probably either some live musicians. Mm-hmm. It generally means there'll be some live musicians, and so then you become kind of more of a. You may be giving cues live during the show, so you may be kind of helping to. Make sure all the songs start in the right place.
Conducting, basically.
Conducting, yeah, exactly, yeah. So.
And are you playing as well?
Musical. Yeah, of course. So quite often you'd be playing as well. So you'd be sort of like conducting with your head and playing the piano at the same time and doing the cue and then.
Very nice.
Yeah, it's quite. I mean, it's quite nerve-wracking learning it because it's like, okay, so left hand needs to do 3, 4. And then the right hand needs to play C major. Yeah, right. You play a chord, and then you've got to make sure everything's the right volume, and it's one of those. But the Bob Marley show is not a difficult show to MD. It's a really fun show to MD.
Okay.
It's a really.
Can you tell us more about it? Are you on stage? How does it work?
Yeah, so it's we're sort of on stage, sort of off stage, not seen the whole time, but there's certain moments when we come on stage and kind of get involved in some of the scenes. And then, most of the time we have this kind of, we call it the penthouse. We've got this like platform to one side of the stage, just above the stage, where they have the whole band room, and all the band is up there. So we play from there. It's our little hangout area. It's quite nice. Cool. Quite nice vibe.
So yeah. So in terms of changes, I mean, I think that's probably also a big difference to a film, to a movie, right? Because when a movie is made and you write the music for it and then it's released, then at least you can guess that the music is done. But in a play, you actually could change after the first show. You could change things, right? If you see things don't work. Did you experience that already? That you really had to change like a whole piece or some music, or is it written in your contract that at some point you're done with the music, because otherwise it would be a never-ending story?
Yeah. I think there is. Is it contractual? I think it is in the contracts. Yeah, I think there's also kind of general rule that you work all the way up to what's called press night. So press night is the night that the press come and they write their reviews, and they say whether they tell you how many stars they think you deserve, which is that's press night is. I mean, reviewers are a whole other thing. But anyway, so I think after that point, there are definitely some departments that won't do any further work on it. So, for example, lighting designers will very rarely come back and do any extra work on it. Set designers won't change the set at all. Okay. Directors, there are certain people who work on a show who will be there to kind of maintain the show. And that process is generally about sort of giving notes to people, helping to kind of smooth things out in very subtle ways. But there's a definite sort of hierarchy of decision making. So the director is the top of that, obviously. And of course, there's producers as well who may be above the director. So the people who are there to maintain generally sort of stay in their lane and just maintain and don't change too much. But the biggest changes, I would say, normally happen in the sort of 2 or 3 weeks before you open.
Okay.
And in that time, you may be doing what are called previews. So they are shows that are open to the public, but they are previews in that the show can change during that time.
Right. So a work in progress.
And yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you can, depending on how big the show is and how much money the producers have, you may have up to, I think the most previews I've ever done is probably 2 weeks of previews. Okay. So that's 2 weeks of time where director can say, no, don't like that number. Let's change that number, or we need another number, put another song in there, or, and kind of, that's probably the biggest sort of changes that you can have in previews. It's like adding a whole number, which can be, obviously it's quite intense.
Have you ever had to do that?
So yeah. I'd say the most drastic things we've had to do are cuts. So we on the Bob Marley show, we cut probably about, I mean, generally what happens is once you arrive at previews and you've got this show that you've been working on for 6 or 8 weeks in the rehearsal room, and you arrive in the theatre at previews and the show is like 45 minutes too long.
Wow.
Or like half an hour too long. So, I mean, the show I did called Small Island, it wasn't a musical, it was a play, but it was over 4 hours long, the first preview.
And that's a no-no, right? It's just too long.
Yeah. It's just too long. Yeah. It's just too long. And I think they got it down to over 3 hours. I think it was 3 hours 10 minutes. I think they got it down to.
So
which is still a lot, yeah.
Still long, yeah. It's like a Scorsese movie.
It's still long. Yeah, I mean, there's one of the trombone players who played on the score came to watch the show, and in the interval, she was like, "What a great show! Loved it." I went home because it was so long.
What a great show!
Yeah, brilliant show, amazing, loved it. Oh, it's so late. I'm gonna go home now, not realizing it was only halfway through.
Funny.
So so that's the danger of having a really long show.
Right.
But yeah, so you can imagine like cutting out an hour's worth of stuff.
You just hope they don't cut your favorite part, your favorite song, favorite cue.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's brutal. It's just, like films, it can be brutal. Just, nope, not that bit, gone.
Yikes.
But then a good question: how much influence do you have on that? So are you probably just the guy who has to cut? If somebody tell you cut the music and you cut it, or can you? Do they also ask you, especially when you are the musical director? Do they ask you, what do you think about this scene and what should we do there?
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting one. I mean, the hierarchy on bigger shows is that you would have, the director, obviously. Then you might have a music supervisor.
Yeah. Okay.
It's kind of the next in line, and then you might have the musical director, and then you have the assistant musical director, who's me on Get Up Stand Up. So, literally on Get Up Stand Up, because we worked together before on a few other shows, the supervisor, the director and musical director and I have all worked together before. There was a bit more of a collaboration and I'm not sure if I would get asked my opinion on big decisions. I don't think so. As the assistant.
Yeah.
No, not as the assistant, But as composer on a play, you are, I think it's quite democratic. It's quite democratic, depending on what the director's like, I guess. But the process is so collaborative. You'd be working together for 6 weeks
Right.
to just share the room, sharing the process, sharing the you share in the moments that the cast go through as well, because depending on what the play is about, there may be lots of difficult things to deal with. There might be difficult subjects to talk about. Might be difficult moments in the play that are hard for people to act. And actors, they generally go through things as they act them. So the energy and the kind of togetherness is quite strong.
Especially in a small production, you must be a smaller team, I guess, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Depending how big the cast is, depending how many people are involved. Yeah. So I think if things need to be cut, then it's always going to be a group effort to say, look, all right, well, yeah, we have to cut something. And I haven't got in a position yet where I have to be like, no, that has to stay.
Right.
I mean, the other interesting thing about the way I approach doing plays is that I will create a large palette of stuff.
Okay.
And so nothing really is set in stone to go in one particular place.
Ah, okay.
If that makes sense.
So
This is beforehand. You're ready.
Like
you have options.
Yeah. I find it really useful to. Oh, there you go. I find it really useful to create a palette. Yeah, I just think it's very, very useful, because you will always find new places, or you just don't know whether those bits of music or those cues will fit into place.
Is this different palettes? You mean different palettes in terms of genre, of sound, of emotion for the music?
The way I sort of tend to approach it is I was trying to think about like a feeling of the world of the place.
Okay.
So where is it set? Like, what style is the the design of the set itself, and what are the themes of the play, and then try and think about what story I want to tell alongside the text. So, for example, Blues for an Alabama Sky is set in 1930 in Harlem.
Okay.
So you guys probably already can have an idea about what that might sound like, but then of course it's like, maybe I don't want that. Maybe I don't want to do the obvious thing.
Or the director doesn't want that. Maybe. Yeah.
Oh yeah, or the director doesn't want to do the obvious thing, and I'm currently planning. I thought I'm just gonna mix it up. I'm gonna meet an opera singer tomorrow to talk about that.
For this play?
I was thinking, for this play, yeah. So an opera singer, bass clarinet.
Okay, so mixing it up a bit.
And I was thinking of just changing it up a little bit. But so then so the sort of my next step would be to kind of create a big palette, and the same thing applies, I think, with films, is that you need to sort of pitch your ideas a little bit. You kind of have to send them something that you think will inspire them.
Right.
Because I think the same sort of thing applies, is that if you can get the director on your side, as in they like what you do or are doing, then it's much easier to get them to say yes to the music that you send to them.
Right. And that's interesting. You have to kind of create music before they start working, or almost simultaneously, unlike during a film where most of the time we work once we get the picture, a rough draft or a picture lock even. You have to kind of create music, then show them what you have, and then there's a back and forth. Then they can proceed, right? Is that how it works?
Yeah. I mean, it's always slightly different, but yeah, I'd say that's the way I like to do it.
Okay.
As I said, because I just think it's a slightly kind of nerve-wracking process of like writing music and then trying to sort of sneak it in during the rehearsal process.
Okay.
And say, they've done, maybe the actors have learnt the lines for a certain scene. The directors had a go at creating the blocking, and then at a certain point you can kind of make your offer of what you think the music might be. And that at that point is sort of a bit nerve-wracking because you're like sliding up the faders ever so slightly. How about this? How about a bit of that? And a bit
Just
of
in the
that.
middle of nowhere, you just start with the music? Okay.
Yeah, exactly,
Nice.
yeah. And you hope. I mean, the worst reaction I had was I did it on this play once, and the director was like, "Oh, you know what I'd written? I'd written what I thought." It makes me laugh, but I'd written what I thought was a very intensely emotional thing that that people couldn't help but lose their shit and cry to, right? But sorry, can I swear? Sorry,
it's fine.
Yeah, okay. And I thought I'd nailed it, and I played it, and the director went, "What's that swoopy stuff?" Swoopy. Wow. Strings.
So you just went.
And he was
Lower the.
He just didn't.
Lower the fader.
Okay, take it back out. Yeah, he just didn't like it. And maybe it was the point. It's like a game as well to be like, okay, what point should I introduce this music to make it feel right?
So this is during rehearsal.
And this was like quite late on in rehearsals. Okay. This is what they call tech rehearsals, which is they call it tech, which is when you're in the theatre and rehearsing and trying to sort out the lighting and all of that stuff.
But that's a good.
Sorry, I might have gone off topic.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. So then maybe can you give us an overview of when do you exactly start writing the music for a play or getting in touch? Do you start on script basis? What are the next steps? How long does it take? That would be cool.
So in general, I think you probably might get a script for between 4 and 6 months, I guess, before the play is due to start.
That's a long time.
That's a long time, yeah.
Or before it's a long time, yeah. Maybe less. Mm-hmm. And so you get the script, you get to read the script and talk to the director before you accept the offer of the job or not. And that normally works out because plays obviously they've taken this play Blues for an Alabama Sky was written in 1993, so it's like it's already there to read and it's out there. And so at that point it's sort of a discussion about what your vision might be for it and whether you can. I think at that point it's really just trying to get an idea whether you can work with a director on a personal level. Mm-hmm. And if that sort of seems to work, then you might go into start making some or putting down some ideas and making some kind of pre-rehearsal demos. And it's really all just based off the initial conversations that you have. So the director's idea for the show and your kind of feeling for what the director likes to do and their style. So I went to see one of Lynette Linton's plays before I accepted the job, or was it after? I think it was after actually, because I mean some people you just know you want to work with, so that's fine. But I went to see one of her plays, and really you really get a sense for them as a person. You get a sense for how they think about music and the types of things they like to do and all that sort of stuff. But then so right now I'm in that kind of that moment where I should be writing music right now.
right.
But it's like sort of gathering your instrumentation and gathering sounds you want to use and I think the good thing about plays is that you get most of the time you get given the job and then you get to just mess about until you find something that works. Mm-hmm. Not mess around, but experiment.
Yeah, right. You have the time and the freedom.
Yeah. So I'm like, cool. I've always wanted to use some kind of old tape effects. Cool. Let me just see if I can find a way of doing that. Or I met this opera singer at an event I went to, and she's great, and I've seen her perform, and she's incredible, and I really want to work with her as well. So, yeah, it's sort of like gathering your influences, and then trying to create your sound from that, and trying to create something unique for that production.
Do you go?
Did I answer?
Yeah,
answer
absolutely.
The question? I'm not
Do
sure,
you
but yeah,
ever
cool.
do you ever go do you ever watch any other plays or of the same play, past performances, or to get an inspiration or to see how it was done, to maybe
Yeah, occasionally, yeah, definitely.
like even
It can
online
be quite
on
difficult to
YouTube?
find.
Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it can be quite difficult to find resources, because generally plays are just sort of like, they're sort of weird things that people put loads of effort into, and then people see it and then it disappears forever,
Right.
which is it's
incredible,
just
yeah.
one of those weird.
If it's not a
It's just
hit,
one of
then
those. Yeah. I mean, if it's not being performed, generally there's not a video recording
wow.
most
Okay,
of the time.
yeah.
Most of the time. But that's actually changing, to be fair. I think lots of theatres now are starting to do, through COVID, there was definitely
Right.
a push to kind of make sure that that plays were filmed, and you could experience them at home.
So
Yeah.
then, just coming back again to the question before, when you told us you introduced your beautiful string team and it was cut out, is this something the people you work with expect from you, that you make active suggestions during the process, or do they just decide it on their own, or you talk to them before, but during the rehearsals it's not your job to do that?
I think it's an interesting one, because what actually happened to me once was that I didn't make enough suggestions during the process, and I felt like I wasn't involved enough.
Okay.
And you get this sort of strange feeling, this strange sort of FOMO, that you could be influencing the production more. And I think the ideal world is that you feel really comfortable enough to just say whatever. Like, you feel comfortable enough in the room, and you know who you're working with well enough that you can just say anything and give any idea, get any opinion, in a tasteful, respectful way. But I think that's the ideal. It should be a very open process. It should be a very, very kind of collaborative process. But obviously, the tricky thing as a composer is that you can't spend all day, every day in rehearsal room, because you've got to go and write some music.
Yeah,
exactly.
So it's nice to be part of the process, but you're also a little bit removed from it, just because you can't spend all the.
And so how often do you go into rehearsals, and what's your time like?
It will depend. It would really depend. I mean, sometimes I'll kind of create a mobile rig and I'll sit in rehearsals and write while I'm there. So that's quite fun.
Cool.
And sometimes, depending what else is happening, then I might have to spend some time working on other things and then come and go, and that's where it becomes slightly more difficult. Slightly more difficult to get involved. But it's so much of a collaborative team effort. I mean, for example, on the play I was talking about, the sound designer on that show was great with music.
Okay.
So he was really, really quick and really, really sensitive, and he's a great musician. So he was able to use bits of my music without asking me, and so that was an interesting dynamic, where it would be like, okay, you've made that decision, that wasn't my decision, but I'm glad you did it, because the music's in.
So what music did he grab? Stuff that you've made for the show, or other shows, or?
Yeah, no, stuff I'd made for the show, and I kind of sort of created that palette, as I said, and sent and shared.
He
it
just
with
repurposed
him.
it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Sort of a music editor sort
Very
of thing.
Cool. Yeah.
So yeah, it's an interesting thing, and then it's just your ego. It's like, wow, okay, all right, yeah, cool,
Sounds
it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds good. Yeah.
But you said some ideas were good too, right? There was some cool stuff he did.
Yeah, no, definitely some great ideas.
And so, man,
Yes, it is.
it's so interesting how it's so hands-on and you have to be on location.
Mm.
I'd imagine it'd be hard to work on a play or musical when you're from abroad or from in another location. It must be like
Yeah,
most of your work has
yeah,
been in London, right?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess you could do it. I guess you could.
Probably.
But I really think that you read a script and then you get an idea of what the story
Hmm.
is. You might get an idea. You might get an idea of what the themes are,
Okay.
and then you have design meetings and you can see models of the play. They make like a
Hmm.
1/52nd version of the set.
Yeah.
You can see that, and then but you can't see the main character's tone of voice, or you can't see the chemistry between two characters, or there's so many things that you can't really pick up on from if you're not in
Yeah,
the
just
room.
the intensity, the vibe
Mm,
between the characters. Yeah, it's
yeah, yeah,
something
yeah, yeah,
special that you have to be in the place in the rehearsal to understand.
yeah.
Wicked.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's really important to be there to just to be able to pick up on those things, and I think that can totally change. That can totally change your idea of what the score should be. Um, I think, for example, on Small Island, it's obviously not very experienced. That was the first play that I
Okay.
did, and I had no idea it was funny. I had no idea it was funny until the until the first preview, and then I was like, "Wait, everyone's laughing. Why is everyone laughing?" Like,
Even through the script,
you know,
you didn't notice until later, right?
I didn't get that there were funny moments. I mean, of course, there were funny moments in the script, but I didn't realize how
Right,
funny, and
right.
I didn't realize which lines actors were going to get laughs
That's
for.
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then and they're all super skilled at realizing when they get a laugh, and then being able to like just milk that and
Yeah.
create and be like, oh, that was a laugh, okay, cool, let me just
And so,
craft
did
that
that
moment a bit
change
more.
for you musically? What you had to do? Did you make tweaks for that?
I think I did in during previews, so I would still writing during
Okay.
previews and adding cues or changing cues because of that. Yeah.
So interesting because I think you're in such a challenging position because on the one hand you have to be there and you have to be on the rehearsals to be part of the developing team, but on the other hand you have to write the music away from the rehearsals, so it's super
Mm, mm.
challenging. I can imagine.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest challenge, I guess, that I haven't even mentioned yet, is that if you have budget to record musicians, that music needs to be recorded and edited in time for the beginning of
Oh
tech,
wow!
which is still 2 weeks before it opens.
So you're taking a chance.
You have to take a huge chance, yeah, a
Wow,
huge chance.
that's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't. I mean, I don't think it's a good idea to go into tech without having the music recorded yet. I mean, you could, but
Even like
yeah,
a mock-up
yeah.
that then you then just change.
No, you could, yeah, you could, but it's when you get into tech, it's tech days are normally sort of 10 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Okay.
and you are working all the way through that to kind of make sure that the music you've written will fit for the time that we were talking about, making sure interactively it fits in the time that you've got. And during that time, everybody's creating the lighting design and they're making sure the costumes and the wigs and the makeup and all of that is on point. So then to take time out of that to do your recording session and edit the music is, yeah. For me, it's better to, if you arrive, you've got your stems, you can arrive, you've got each
Right.
cue recorded. You can then edit with what you've
Okay.
got. And if you need something else, you just have to edit things together.
Very
So yeah, I mean, so for Small Island, I think I had 30 something cues
cool. Okay. And you recorded live musicians?
recorded. Yeah, I mean, this was pre-COVID, so this was
Okay.
I had like a budget to record 20
Wow.
musicians, which was
That's amazing.
like so good, choose my own ensemble. So I had like a kind of I think it was about, how many was it? It must have been about 11-piece sort of big band, jazz band.
Okay.
And then I had a string quartet and then I had three. I had a flute player, I had a French horn player, and a clarinet player.
Wonderful. Wow.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. Got a shout out to the musicians. Some great musicians, and worked with some really cool session players. People that played on all kinds of big film scores and things like that. So it was really.
And did you do the whole most of the work on your own, like from sketching ideas to the mock-ups to preparing the score to then preparing the parts? Did you do all of that for that play?
Yeah, I did. Did I have a copyist? I may have had a copyist.
Okay.
May have used the copyist. Yeah. But I did all the rest myself. Yeah, including the mixing. Did mixing myself.
Do you ever work with orchestrators? I know you're a great orchestrator, but do you ever have help for that?
I on plays. I haven't on plays.
Have not on plays. Okay.
No, I haven't. Have not. No. Just because the budget is probably not really there for that, and also because apart from Small Island, everything else I've done has been a much smaller band. Okay. So maybe recording 3 musicians, something like that.
Right. So you don't need as much.
Yeah.
So budget, I think budget is a good question. How do you how do you know before? So do they just tell you, okay, you have this budget for music, and then you decide which musicians do you record, or do they exactly tell you before, okay, we want in this piece a clarinet and a string quartet and whatever?
Most of the time, the budgets are decided quite far in advance, and depending on what theatre you're working at, there will be set pay rates for musicians, or not only just for the sessions, but also for the royalties that they get and all of that sort of stuff. And music is expensive. It's the musicians, as it should be.
Of course.
Musicians are expensive. So so generally quite far in advance. So for example, there's a play that I've been speaking to a theatre about, which is starting next rehearsal start in February next year, and they already know that they want 2 musicians. Okay. They can afford to record. Well, they can afford to have 2 on-stage musicians, and so that would be the what I have to work with for that play, which is quite small.
Yeah.
It's not very much, but that's probably because because they are paying somebody loads of money to be in it, and that is also
actors. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is also quite quite a big thing, is who's playing a lead role, of course.
And for this play, when there's just a few musicians, I guess you'll have more sampled instruments, more of a production side done, right? Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, so this is 3 recorded musicians, not on stage musicians. Okay. So 3 recorded, and I think that means I have 2 sessions with each musician. Okay. So it's 2 3-hour sessions. So everything, the MU is like the musicians union here is all powerful, strong, mighty fist of the
nice.
MU. Which is good if you're a musician. Like if I was being employed on one of these shows, it's great because it means everything is laid out, which is great. But 2 3-hour sessions, I think, with these musicians, and then you're not allowed to do any overdubs. And then they also get paid at the end of the run. They get a kind of royalty payment at the end of the run. So
for the live performance.
It's for the live performances,
wow.
Yeah. Okay. But the recorded music.
Right. That's interesting.
Yeah. So this one, 3 musicians, which is great. So what do you think? Opera singer, bass clarinet. I was thinking viola.
Viola, bass clarinet,
something in the middle.
And this is for Harlem.
This is for Harlem, okay. But the idea is that Harlem at that point was full of lots of different types of music. Like, right. It was like the idea, like maybe you could walk down the street and there'll be an opera singer practicing coming out of one window, and there's a classical clarinetist, and then a jazz viola player. Not that, but I think there's a lot of.
So is that tell us more about your thought process here? What are you planning on doing? Is it like a mix of genres? Or are you gonna move around a bit?
Definitely going to be a mix of genres. I just feel like I just love the idea that if you walk down the street in Harlem at that time, in the summer of 1930, you'll just be hit with so many different, like a mixture of cultures, a mixture of influences, and there was this amazing kind of, they call it the Harlem Renaissance. There was a real kind of upswelling of like creative talent, writers and painters and musicians, and yeah, it just seems like it, my romanticized version of it, it's this really kind of exciting place to be, where you could just, listen to a beat poets, or yeah, exactly.
Cool.
So the score, I'm hoping, and I've spoken to the sound designer about this, I want to kind of create that. I want to immerse the audience from the beginning of the play in this kind of really rich feeling score that will kind of, just something that will transport you, nothing too cerebral, just something that will just really kind of just bring you in quite warm.
Very cool, very interesting.
Yeah, I haven't written a single note.
That's okay, you're still
it's all ideas.
Brewing, yeah,
exactly, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, totally. Oh, sorry, making noise.
So in the next episode with you, we just listen to the music and go through it, and you tell us a little bit about
exactly. If you want a brainstorming session.
Yeah, man. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'll play some. Of the tracks.
I was wondering, Ben, how did you get into this? I mean, after because of course we studied together at Berkeley, all three of us. A lot of us went into film, others like commercials, some did songwriting. How did you get into to plays and musicals? Like,
Yes, I mean, I'd done a little bit. I worked on a musical as an assistant musical director
before Berkeley.
Before I came to Berkeley. Okay. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I don't know if you guys remember, but I was a few days late to start because I was just finishing being assistant on the show.
You're already a big shot. Yeah.
Yeah, you came in like a star, like just late, and then you just
who's this guy?
New guy. So I sort of there's a sort of a network sort of thing, which I was, I guess, known in the network as someone who has done some theatre, and that's a whole other thing as well. Fixers and
right.
That kind of
and you come from a background of like performance. You were an active musician before. I guess that's how you established your network, I guess, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So I was born in London, went to school, did music college in London, and then had been playing not super heavily involved in the jazz scene, but like I knew lots of great musicians, and I'd done gigs with some great musicians from London, slightly older musicians as well, and just been around and kind of involved in a group of really nice people and part of the scene in that way. So that was really cool. Okay. Which I think London is one of those places where if you get to know enough people, things there's lots of different things that you can end up doing. So I've done performance TV pop things on TV and that sort of thing a little bit, and various stuff. Alongside that, I've been teaching piano for years and years and not really earning any money. And actually, one of the best things about Berkeley is, obviously it was a super expensive thing to do, but, I think it really sort of propels you in a way. I definitely found that definitely sort of propelled me into another area. And that was basically because I got back, went back to doing some of the things that I'd been doing before, and then got a call to say, we're making a play about people emigrating from Jamaica to the UK. It's on a really big stage, and we want the score to be cinematic, but also we want it to have elements of Jamaican music. And I was like, are you joking? That's literally, I've just finished this master's in film scoring. Here's my recording from Air Studios.
Wow. Amazing.
And it's just like, it was just one of those things. Very, very lucky to kind of be in the right place and have, I guess, not lucky that I'd chosen to do it, but lucky that those things kind of
just happened at the right time, right?
yeah, those things intersected.
And it just, most of the work came to you, right? You didn't have to really hustle that much. I mean, your network was created. Now, then you had that like background in jazz and in film music, and you just, and people started calling you. And I guess your one job led to the next, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, it's quite lucky that this play, the first play, Small Island, was really very successful. Sort of sold out run, and got really good reviews, and so that was, that was a massive springboard, really, in theatre. Lots of people came to see it. It was, it was one of those productions that everything came together. So, yeah, the people who saw it enjoyed it, which was all you can ask for, really, and yeah, so that definitely led to more work. I mean, especially, I've got to say, really luckily, I'm very privileged to be working at the National Theatre, which is, it's government funded,
Okay.
and it's sort of like a weird dreamland in the nicest possible
Okay.
way, but it's like not really like, it's not like real real life or real theatre. It's because it's not commercial theatre. It's subsidized.
Right.
So they get to choose and pick and choose what they put on a bit more, and they don't have to worry so much, I think, about making money. So it's a bit more artistic in a way, a bit more freedom, and it's just a really great place to work. It's just fantastic. It's just big up National Theatre. They're just, nice place.
That's awesome. Good for you, man. Very cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. Yeah. But I would say that I do have to hustle, or I have been trying to hustle in the film and
Right.
film and TV.
Because you do both, and sometimes you get like you have so much work in one that you don't have time, or you don't get recognition. Not recognition, but you don't get as many calls. Once you're in that field, it's hard to get stuff from the other side, right?
Yeah, it totally feels like my sort of goal at the moment is to try and find that way to cross over. Not that as you can tell, I love doing theatre. I think it's great, but I think every composer's dream is to do that big budget movie that's
Absolutely.
really really deep and intense, but also pays you loads of money.
Right.
So yeah,
I can use beautiful string music without them
Yeah,
telling
exactly.
you what's
No.
that kind of
Yeah, I just want a culture director who appreciate my swing music.
Yes. Wow.
But yeah, so I mean, I think it's always a bit of hustle involved, and sort of lucky in a way to be in a position where I've been like put up for things, TV things here, a couple of Netflix things, like put up for it, but not got anything.
Like the pitch, yeah.
The pitch for it, yeah.
Eventually it'll happen, yeah. You just keep.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's what it is. Yeah, but I should say that that there are quite a few directors who are crossing over from theatre to film.
Okay.
So in my sort of mini game plan, my evil plot, it's just to be involved with people like that and try and create some kind of connections, but professionally and personally, just see what.
I think that's the best option for real. That's a great plan.
But I would say interesting thing, I guess, difference, chatting to you guys, my friends, is the idea that it was, and I listened to your episode with Clem. What the idea that you can do assistant jobs, which I think is a really 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 great way of looking at your guys' careers. It's a good way to get into doing things.
Right.
In film and TV, and I just think because I'm an old granddad compared to you guys.
No, you're a big brother.
Yeah, I just didn't really feel comfortable with it. It's just one of those things I didn't really feel comfortable. I felt too old, and maybe that's just me being. I did actually apply for a couple of assistant jobs, but it just sort of felt like it wasn't the right thing for me.
Did we change your?
And I needed to find.
Did we change your mind? Did the episode change your mind?
It changed my mind. No,
because maybe you don't have to see it as a
Yeah.
a full-time job as an assistant, right-hand man of a composer. Maybe you can just do a few, like Clem does a lot. She assists a few different composers on small jobs at a time, or even just for orchestration or just for specific jobs. I think that was an
Yeah,
interesting thing I
yeah.
learned, at least.
I think totally, yeah. And also, I remember her point about some assistants that she knows are in their 50s, and it's not really about age.
Right.
Yeah, no, don't get me wrong. If there are definitely one or two composers I would consider that I know of that I would consider reaching out to say, can I do any work with you? Like, can I do anything to help you?
You mean others except of us?
But yeah, I get.
Do you mean others
sorry?
except of us? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, no.
Actually, I was thinking of
Yeah.
you two. Can I have a job, please?
We'll think about it.
We decide after the episode.
Yeah, if it goes
Yeah,
well.
okay, right. I didn't realize this was an interview.
A little bit.
I would have put a nice
Yeah,
shirt.
I
No,
took
I
notes,
like that
yeah.
one.
Yeah.
That's extra points. You extra points for that shirt.
Yeah. So so I guess that was an interesting difference, but obviously, yeah. Looking back, I just don't know. I don't think it would have worked for me, and I'm happy that I've gone sort of down this route. Maybe it'll take me a little bit longer to get to where I want to get to, but
Yeah. That's what's cool, man. We all have our different paths, and they seem to be all working. I mean, everyone from our class, or at least the vast majority of us, are doing so well, and what's interesting is that we've all done something different, and we're still doing something different. I mean, you with the musicals and plays, Fabian has done a lot more film, Clem assistant jobs. I did a bit of commercials, assistant job, a few short films. You see, it's very interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah,
But it also
yeah.
shows that there's not one way. It's like so
Yeah.
many different ways, and every path is different.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I think, yeah, it depends. I think the people that we know from our class, all like as people really talented first of all, and then really kind of focused. We know what we want to do.
Yeah.
And we can see, you can see how to get to where we want to get using what's in front of us.
Yeah.
It is tactical in a way. Tactical is the wrong word, but it is. Actually, I think it's completely the wrong word. I take it all back. It's not tactical at all. My theory is that it's all out there in the universe. You just manifest the things.
Exactly, and you just hop from one thing to the next until you slowly find it starts like this, and then you slowly narrow it down to like a direction you want.
Yeah, and the tactical thing about it is really just following that thing that you want.
Yeah.
It's really just being aware that there are opportunities there, and you can kind of just grab it. Because if that's what you
and
want.
also that I think there's no bad opportunity. Sometimes you're like I've caught myself doing some projects that are like I feel like this is kind of pointless or whatever. I don't like this project, but then later down the road I see that that director like called me back, or just every project, or you learn from a lot of different projects. So everything
absolutely.
every opportunity helps you along the line, I think.
Definitely.
Absolutely, yeah.
Even if it's a bad experience, you learn from that, and you know what to do different the next time.
Yeah, actually, totally. And like I was saying, I think that I had this play that I was working on recently, and I felt like I didn't get involved enough in the process. And then I think back and think, because maybe I wasn't around enough, or maybe I just wasn't brave enough to kind of put my ideas out there. I was slightly intimidated by the people that I was working with. It's definitely a personal kind of journey as well. And trying to kind of come to every job with a bit of humility and a kind of openness, and start fresh, each time. I don't know how you guys feel about that when you start on something new.
When we start, sorry, what?
Start on something new.
Right.
I have a question different from the assistant thing and path thing and philosophy thing we did now.
Yeah. We went too deep there.
It's about immersive audio. It's probably a completely different thing, but I was thinking in theater, probably, I don't know, maybe it could it could open a door for doing things with also in surround, or thinking about music which changes through the time. So I don't know, for example, I was just thinking about a scene, a character goes more and more away from reality, so the music starts in the front and then goes more and more into space or something like this. I don't know. Do you use that in your project, or do they use it in the theater?
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Yeah, I mean, I think depending on the size of the theatre and the kind of configuration of it, the sound designer can put speakers essentially wherever they want. Wow. So it depend on sort of the structure of the building and where there's rigging points available to to physically put a speaker, but and then a number of channels is I've never even asked, but it's it's a massive systems that they put into theatres. So there's always the opportunity to make the audio immersive in that way, which is really fun. It's super fun. It's really great because you can for example, if a sound design is very useful. For example, there's a scene in Small Island. I might be giving some spoilers here, but there's a scene where someone has a baby, and for that, at that point, I think he used a heartbeat, which he then put into the subs, but he also put into all of the surrounds and behind the audience's head. Quite often, you can really mess with people, and you can put voices, individual voices in one speaker there, for example, behind someone's head, and really kind of create some spooky things going on there. But in general, you can treat them a lot like you would the surrounds in a 5.1 mix, and use them for your reverbs and things like that, and just kind of create a really nice big.
So this is something you do. You prepare that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think most of the time, composers will probably just arrive with stems, and then say, can we put the high percussion stem, or very, very high hand percussion, can we put that in the surrounds, for example,
So whether it's like 5.1 or 7 or 12, it doesn't matter. As long as you have stems, you can control that however you please.
Totally,
okay, cool.
Totally. Say, can you send a bit of the reverb of this to there? Can you send a bit of the reverb to that? And the configuration of it is not. I don't think it's not really uniform. It depends. The sound designer will have an idea about what sounds best in that theatre, in that venue. So they'll set up their reverbs, for example, to create that space that you're in. And then vocals will go through whichever reverbs they're using, and then music will have a set kind of a set sound in that sense. Music. There's two main speakers that music will come from. Generally, the voices come from one center speaker, like 5.1, and so the reverbs will fit the space that you're in. But then after that, you can add effects and things and whatever you feel like having.
Yeah,
it's great. It's just a clean. It's an open palette, really. So whatever you can think of, whatever you can imagine, you can pretty much do.
Is there speaking of that, do you have a specific venues that you prefer, that you like in London? Your favorite ones, maybe?
To go to
or
see a play.
For you to work in, or to see plays,
to work in. I guess no. I'd have to say no, not really. I mean, obviously, I've already said working at the National Theatre is great, and I was lucky enough to work in the large theatre they have there, which is called the Olivier Theatre, which is about, I think it's, I can't remember how many people. I think it's just over 1,000 people. So it's fairly large, and it's an interesting place to work because it's a very wide stage and very open. and it also has a revolve in the middle of it, so things
Oh, cool.
spin,
Wow.
which is quite fun.
Nice.
Yeah. And I think you end up working with people. People get hired, or sound designers get hired because they know how to work in that space.
Mm-hmm.
Is it more like in-house
and
people?
Sometimes, but most of the time it's freelancers.
Okay.
So so there's a kind of not a huge pool of freelancers. So generally, you might work with the same people more than once.
Okay.
Within a few
And
years.
are these like old British houses, or I mean, not houses, but like old British buildings, or is it like some are state of the art new buildings?
Yeah, mostly like very old places. Yeah, mostly
Very
mostly
cool.
in London. Yeah. I mean, the National Theatre is an interesting one because it's this kind of what they call, I think they call it brutalist architecture.
Okay.
So everything's made out of concrete. It looks like a sort of really blocky concrete spaceship that's sort of been landed there by accident.
And it's old.
And it's fairly old. Yeah, it's fairly old. I think when did they build it? I can't remember when they built it, but it's probably, like 70, 80 years old.
Okay.
It's not that old.
Yeah.
Not that old. Yeah. But yeah, so it's this big old kind of modern building. But yeah, like right in the center of it, you could get zero like phone reception because it's all constantly made out of concrete. Apparently, if there's a nuclear blast in the middle of that building, it's the safest place to be because you're surrounded by
beautiful music and concrete.
Yeah, about a mile of concrete. Yeah. So National is sort of newer, I guess. Where we are doing Get Up Stand Up, it's called the Lyric Theatre, which is in Shaftesbury Avenue, which is, I've no idea how old that is. It's probably incredibly old. Like no lifts, no AC, that sort of thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
So one day we have to come. One day the two of us were coming, and then we visit one of the shows you made the music for, and every time the music appears, we clap like insane.
There you go.
After every cue, Oh, wonderful.
Actually, do you guys go on tour sometimes? I think once the play is done locally, then you move it around.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Wow.
So if it's done fairly well, if there feels like there's still some potential, then it will go on tour. But there's lots of what's it called, variables. The size of the set. So if it's built for a really large theatre, then it will be difficult to find other very large theatres to go to take on tour. But yeah, in general things will go on tour, or they'll transfer to Broadway, which is kind of like the kind of the golden ticket, really.
Right.
If it does really well. I mean, vice versa as well. Things that do well on Broadway will transfer to the West End. So that's something, I guess, that a lot of productions, if they feel appropriate for that, appropriate for an American audience, then they'll have that sort of one eye on that as they're being produced. That there's a possibility of transferring to Broadway.
Very cool.
So there's a lot of kind of transatlantic collaboration. So I'm doing another show. I'm actually going to be music supervisor for Nelson Mandela.
Wow,
musical. Nice, very cool.
That's cool. So a new role for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I've sort of got myself in there as music supervisor for that. So I have an MD joining us. There is. Yeah, there's an MD joining us, and there's an orchestrator on that one, and there'll also be a copyist, and there'll also be a keyboard programmer and a fixer.
And do you know the composer?
And the composer as well. Yeah, the two writers. There's two writers from South Africa.
Oh, from South Africa.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. So that's the non-music writing, but it's very musical in the sense that you are creating the real kind of shape of the show, or the shape of the music in the show.
I wonder.
So it's kind of like it's arranger's sort of role.
Yeah, I wonder how much say you have over you didn't choose the composer, so you just have to work with what they give you, and it's going to be interesting to see what you can how much you can shape the music.
Yeah, Yeah, it's gonna. I mean, yeah, absolutely, it's gonna be really, really interesting. The kind of dynamic in these cases, especially with musicals, is that people generally work on the composers of musicals generally work on them for years and years.
Mm.
So they are this one, for example, they have been working on for about 9 years, I
Okay.
think, or more.
Wow.
And so they are giving you their, baby essentially. So you have to be very gentle, and you've got to be very, very understanding that it's a precious, very precious thing for them, especially in this case where it's the first, it's a world premiere, it's the first production. So yeah, it's yeah. I mean, there will be changes. Obviously, there's got to be.
Yeah.
you know, but yeah, hopefully that process will be smooth and you'll be able to. It's about communication,
Right.
isn't it? It's not, not going to say that this song is rubbish. We've got to cut it.
Yeah. That's not how.
There's a nicer way to say that.
Wow, crazy. So that's some exciting
Yeah.
stuff, man, coming up, and you've done a lot of stuff in for theater, and it's been a pleasure to go over all this with you. I think I just have one more question. It's maybe off topic. I'm not sure because I'm not sure about what this is, but the House and Garage Orchestra is what is that about?
Yeah. What is it? House and
what's
Garage. House and we say House and Garage
Garage.
Orchestra.
I'm sorry.
It's got to be a garage.
Yeah.
It's
The American way of saying it. Canadian.
Yeah. So like house and garage, like house music, I mean, you've probably heard of. But garage music is it's kind of like a UK based, UK originated, like urban. I guess you can. I don't like using that word, but like urban music. Right. Sort of kicked off like the late 90s, got really, really big around the early 2000s. And there's artists like you might have heard of Craig David. There's artists called there's a group called So Solid Crew. There's Mystique. There's quite a few sort of artists
in that genre.
And it is very UK based, but it's essentially like a dance music.
So this is your band, or
yeah. So this is like I'm actually working with a couple of one of the producers who produced one of the hits from back in a few of the hits from back in the day. And his business partner. And it's actually a funny story. So my mum is constantly thinking she's my agent.
Nice. That's good.
And
that's fantastic.
She's like, Ben, my friend plays an instrument. I think you should work with him.
That's simple.
The best, actually, I've got to tell you this. The best time was when she went to see. She went to the Royal Festival Hall, the big concert hall here. And she saw this bass player, little known bass player called, oh man, the name just got out of my head. Anyway, so she saw this bass player, like world famous bass player. And she's like, Ben, I think you should work with that. It's really.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
I'm like, okay, cool. I mean, yeah, maybe after she's finished writing her next Grammy-winning album, she can work with me. Yeah, I was like, so it's like that side of things.
Yeah.
And then there's the other side of things where it's just some, it's somebody who played drums once and they want to do music and I'm like, okay, cool. But in this case, she was like, my friend's son does music. And I was like, okay, Mum. What's the website? Yeah, I can check out. Checked out the website. House and Garage Orchestra pops up. And I was like, okay.
That's where it comes from.
Mum, you've come through. Your mum's come through. Agent Mum has actually pulled out the bag this time. So yeah, so we ended up working together, and our mums are sort of like best friends.
That's cool.
So it's quite nice.
And so you're musical director on this for this group.
Yeah.
And
yeah, that's right.
And what exactly are you working on, an album or performing live? What is it you do?
So it's a really fun one. It's creating orchestrations or creating arrangements of these tunes for an orchestra. So we sort of just get to decide what our lineup is, and at the moment it's about a string section and a rhythm section. So we can we've got a gig on Friday with 16 strings, 24-piece band.
Wow.
And we play these arrangements and have fun. I've had lots of fun kind of creating these arrangements of these tunes, and we just get up there and everyone all these 40-somethings come down and enjoy their
They
lives.
just
Relive
is
their
it
youth.
just a lot of dancing?
Yeah. A lot of
Okay,
dancing. A lot of dancing.
That's
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. Good times. Good times.
That's
yeah.
awesome.
No, it's a really good fun, a really fun gig. And nice as well to kind of sort of be like, okay, they've got to write for strings, and at some point I think we'll probably expand it so that we'll include some more like tune percussion
Okay.
and then maybe some woodwinds. But at the moment it's like a horn section, so it's like trumpet, trombone, tenor saxophone, 16 strings, and then like percussion, drums, keys, bass.
So is the whole band always that, or does the string section change, the members change?
Yeah, so the members
Okay.
change. Yeah, we use a fixer to kind of get our strings.
But the band side is all the same people.
Yeah, we've got kind of a small pool of people. I mean, it's always people always sort of slightly busy, or
Very cool.
But
is there anywhere?
Yeah, no, it's.
Can we hear the music anywhere? Is it recorded? Has anything recorded yet?
Yeah. I mean, there's they have an album that they did before I joined, but there's also lots of stuff on their Instagram. So it's the House and Garage Orchestra.
House and Garage
Yes,
Orchestra.
we'll definitely share the link in the show notes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Check it out.
And how about your stuff, Ben? Where can our friends and listeners follow you?
I've got socials, mate. I'm on the socials on Instagram.
Big player.
You can find me.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm not. We're sitting with the king of Spotify here.
Yeah, I know who it is. Yeah, Mr. Fabian.
No. So yeah, my social is just Benjamin Kwasi, which is my middle name, Kwasi. Benjamin Kwasi.
Really nice. So become a friend with Ben, connect with him, or work with him. He's an amazing guy. I trust us.
And if you have any questions, of course, send them over. We'll either answer them or send them over to Ben, and maybe have a second episode. And where can they send them, Fabi?
Contact at mfspodcast.com, or you just write us on Instagram, or you on the YouTube link from the video you see. You can also ask questions. So wherever you can see us and find us, you can write us and ask us a question.
Wonderful. So is that it? That's all.
I think so, yeah. It was a wonderful time with you, Ben.
Thanks, guys.
So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Such a pleasure, my friend.
Man, what an honor, especially considering who you've had on so far.
We've had some, very impressive
There's
people.
some top guests. Love it. So, yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I hope we will have you in another episode one day. And good luck on your work, and much love to London, and hope to see you again very soon.
Yeah, I hope to see you guys here soon.
Take care.
So thank you.
Keep
Thank
in
you
touch.
guys. Bye bye.
See you. Bye bye.